Okay, hello everybody. This is going to be my first book review slash reflection video. I plan to make more through as I get through and complete books, and I'll be motivated to get through them and pay attention to them and get something out of them, knowing I'm going to be making a video and sharing with other people in an effort to be more concise in my expression, but also just to sort of in an effort to recall and reflect on things that I'm reading and reflecting on, so I don't just read them and move on and forget what I read. And so with that, the book that I'll be reflecting on today is Mysterious Benedict Society by Trenton Lee Stewart. I read this book in fourth grade, so that was some 12 something odd, some 12 odd years ago. And I'm rereading it. I saw it on my bookshelf. I was like, I really need fiction. I really need to read fiction again. I haven't read fiction since high school. High school was at least 4 years ago. And I'm like, I have to get off the screen. I have to replace, my hobbies, my scrolling with turning, right? I kind of just said that to my head. I said, replace scrolling with page turning, right? And even if I'm still wasting my time in books, at least it's books and not the phone, right? So I kind of wanted to just get into all of that. And I just picked up, I looked down my bookshelf and I was like, oh man, the Mysterious Benedict Society, I remember that. It's just hiding down here. Haven't read in forever. So I decided to reread it, knowing that I didn't remember what was going on. It's a kid's book. It's made for the sort of fourth grade, fifth grade reading level, maybe middle school reading level. But it deals with things that I struggled with in fourth grade and I still struggle with today. And that's what makes it such a great work of literature and such an underrated, overlooked, might I add. I don't really know anyone else who's familiar with the series other than myself, and I think my fourth grade teacher who recommended it to me. But it's the first book in a series of four, and then there's a sort of prequel book, a fifth prequel book. I'm not going to summarize it. There's videos out there and you can find stuff online doing that. I'm more so going to assume you've already have familiarity with the book. And then if you don't, go ahead and look up a summary, read it for yourself. I'm reflecting on it. So it's a great book. That's all I can say. There's so much to go into, but I'm going to use this more so as self-reflection things. I'm assuming you've already read the book and now you're sort of engaging with how I'm thinking about it. If you haven't, look up a summary or read the book yourself. Again, it's not going to be a waste of time. So from a literary artistic point of view, which is always the first thing I want to do when I cover, the first thing I plan to be doing when I cover these book reviews, what I really like about Trenton Lee Stewart's writing is, unlike a lot of other books, even kids' books, he has a really delicate sense of balancing the different kinds of content within novels. And what I mean by that is there's an equal amount of dialogue, of inner character dialogue, of thoughts, of inner character thinking, of description, of describing things, and then of actual action in the book taking place, not just people talking to each other. There is a really delicate balance, a really nicely crafted balance of character thoughts, dialogue, description, right, of the scene, setting up the scene, whatnot, and action. And, there's books off the top of my head that I can think of. The last I read before this as a novel was 1984. I was all the way back in high school 4 years ago. And Orwell, it's a masterpiece, considered a literary masterpiece, and that's great. But my biggest critique of it is Orwell does like all this philosophizing. There's just pages and pages where he just goes on and on and on about some issue or something, and it's really fascinating. But it can turn off a lot of readers who want more dialogue, who want more sort of action, more scene description. And so I think even for a kid's book, Stewart does that really, really well in this book. I found myself not getting too lost in pages and pages of description or pages and pages of dialogue. He would always switch it up, right? I really, really liked that. The other thing I liked more so from a content point of view was the focus on orphans, the focus on kids not having parents and finding a calling coming to them, and they're being able to knock out a purpose for themselves, despite the fact that for most of their life they didn't have that, or they had this insane trauma, right? Sticky, he was under the impression that his parents didn't that abandoned him or neglected him. And then with Rini, he didn't have parents. Kate didn't have parents, right? Kate sort of has this overconfidence where she doesn't confront her fears. There's a point in the book where Stuart mentions that she was about to cry but didn't. There's a part of the book where Rini presses her and says, like, it's not funny, and she's like, well, of course it's not funny, but what do you want me to do? So she has this like brilliant optimism. I also love, I guess, from a literary standpoint or a character standpoint, how Trenton Lee, all of the characters are sort of mirrors of each other. They're all like, where Sticky has a strength, Rini has a weakness, where Rini has a strength. They all complement each other perfectly. And there's a really nice, delicate balance of the four main characters, right? Which I really like. As far as themes go, I'm reading this book in my senior year of college, right? Last time I read it was 4th grade. And I am finding that the struggles that the characters go through and the thought process of Rini, which is the most of the thought process that we get thought process some of the other characters, and the themes, the moral and ethical issues that Stuart discusses are still relevant, even as an adult, a young adult, right? And the book is really about fear, truth, and control, right? And those are words and ideas and expressions and feelings and issues that adults struggle with just as much as 4th graders, just as much as kids, like when I first started reading this, right? And actually, before I go back into the themes, I really want to touch on another literary praise of this book, where Stuart really, the way he brings you into the story, brings you into the book through the test taking, and you're taking the test along with the students, and you're getting their thought process. And there's, like, for the most part, I mean, I was smart. I was in 4th grade in a special sort of gifted program or whatever, being recommended this book, and I was smart, and I'm reading the beginning of this book, and I'm having no idea how they're getting through these tests, right? And then you see afterwards their thought process, and you see, then you're like, okay, and then you see like the other character's thought process, it's like, whoa, and then the other character's like, oh my, and it just there's a very nice, Stuart has a very nice way of bringing you back to the same scene a little later on, and sort of tying it with the character, if that makes sense. So you have at the beginning, for example, you have the test taking, and then after the test is over, you get the main character and how he kind of thought through it. But then he kind of comes back, reunites with the other characters, and you see how they all went through it, right? You see at the end of the book, for example, when Constance is in the Whisperer, and she takes the one image that everyone can remember about each of these characters and uses it in her resistance to the Whisperer trying to cover her identity, right? When Mr. Benedict at the beginning says, every single member of this team, you're going to need them, and they were having doubts about Constance and how difficult it would be to get along with her, right? And then she's the one, she's always she's always stubborn, she's always going against, resisting, right? And Mr. Benedict says, you're going to need that, right? And then we see at the very end with the Whisperer that she's the hero, and that she resists, she takes up Mr. Benedict, takes energy away from him and absorbs and as the hero. So that's a really nice artistic thing as well, is he really pieces together, he really knows his characters, their identities, he makes it clear to the readers, he makes the identities simple. Sticky's about polishing his, and I don't mean identities, but just the symbols that represent how we remember them, right? Kate, it's the great Kate Weatherall machine with her bucket and her resourcefulness, right? With Sticky, it's his glasses and his nervousness, right? With Rini, I'm missing what it is with Rini, for Constance, and then with Constance, it's her poetry. So I also like the plot twist at the end, spoiler alert, that Constance is only 2. That blew my mind the first time I read this, and I'm rereading it again, not remembering that was the case, and it blew my mind again. So that is all the literary stuff. And then, yeah, going back to those themes, and I'm sorry, this is out of order. I wanted to do this in one take. The first thing was truth, right? And Mr. Benedict says on page 102, you see, Mr. Benedict began again, although most people care about the truth, they can nonetheless, under certain circumstances and given proper persuasion, be diverted from it. Some, however, possess an unusually powerful love of truth, and you children are among the few. Your minds have been resisting the hidden messages, right? This foreshadows the whisperer, right? This device Mr. Curtin uses to, inculcate the children away from their fears, removing them from their fears so that they can kind of engage in whatever. And we really see Rini struggle with this immensely. And so I read this and highlighted it because I'm like, I'm a senior right now in college, and this is what I'm going through. I have a deep love of truth. I'm pursuing a lot of different angles with truth, religiously, philosophically, literary, improving myself, all these things, and given proper persuasion. That's the key. That's what that foreshadows the whisperer, because the devil works in whispers, right? And not to get too religious about it, although that is the spiritual journey I'm currently going on, but the evil inclination, the devil, whatever you want to call it, it works as whispers. The little voice inside your head is just a whisper at first, and it's saying, "Oh, this is okay. Oh, it doesn't matter," And then, as Mr. Curtin kind of says near the end, it turns into a shout. Right? Once you kind of accept the whispers, it starts shouting at you. It can't shout at you right away. That would be too obvious, right? Something really evil shouts at you right away. Well, of course, I'm going to get away from that. You know what I mean? But if it whispers, if it slowly and subtly, kind of tears you apart and disintegrates you, then it can ramp up, and completely destroy you. And Mr. Benedict is very aware of this, and Mr. Curtin's very aware of this. And so another thing I wanted to highlight, and this was really eerie when I read this, because again, the context of this is it's a children's book. It's about a generic good versus evil. And characters kind of battling it out, but Stewart writes in a way that's very sharp. And he says on the bottom of 378, Mr. Curtin laughed. So this is the context real quick for this is they're in the room, and SQ Pedalian and Martina are Martina's learning for the first time what these things are like, what Mr. Benedict's thought process is, and SQ's kind of just going along with it. And trying to remember because he always forgets things, right? And as he's going through his thought process, he says, Mr. Curtin says, "Of course you do. Again, the magic is in the messages. My whisperer rewards your cooperation by sending extremely high-power messages that deny your fears. A simple procedure. Fears lurk just beneath the surface and are easy to detect." Right? So that is just getting into the psychology of fear. Fears are even those that are overcoming and conquering their fears are always there. They're always brimming. They're always waiting to explode and overtake us. And I've really struggled, especially these past couple of weeks. I've got this paper due and my capstone, and I've just submitted to fear the past couple of days. I've just submitted to stress, and I've just got to do absolutely nothing except this paper and just put the rest of my life on pause. It's I can't do that. I'm not even if I wanted to do, because if I don't get to this paper today, if I don't do this now, even though I still have 2 weeks to do it, I'm going to be stressing out. It's no, I got to just do a little bit today, and then calm, be chill, and then do, other things, do other productive things like this. So, but then Mr. Curtin laughs. He says, "Sadly, no. The only way," so SQ nodded. "So it's just a wonderful illusion," Martina said. "That explains why fears come back later. I've always wondered about that. When I'm in the Whisperer, they seem to have gone away forever." So the Whisperer is this sort of kid version of whatever it is, other than the actual allegory of the devil whispering to us, or evil, or whatever, the evil voice. The Whisperer, the machine, is like Soma in Brave New World. You have these books where you have, a lot of times this is fixation, this fictional fixation that represents just a drug or a way to escape in our real lives. For me, it's porn. For the people in Brave New World, it was Soma, right? And also other things. And then in in the Mysterious Benedict Society, it's the Whisperer. It's this machine that'll just replay you with all these thoughts and messages that alleviate you of your fears in a really overstimulating way. Right? Mr. Curtin laughed. Sadly, no. The only way fears truly disappear is if you confront them. But who in the world wishes to confront his or her worst fears? And I read this, I highlighted it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is speaking right to me. Right? I'm not confronting my fears. And I'm reading this, this goofy, not goofy, it's amazing. But when I say goofy, I mean it's a little, it's kid-like, it's whimsical in the world building. And yet the message is speaking right to me. And this is what makes great literature, is you have something that can speak to you. You have something that is so powerful of a message, even if it's contained in this sort of whimsical world building that is this Mysterious Benedict Society series. And Martinez says, not me. I don't want to confront my fears. And Mr. Curtin says, nobody does. And now we are on the brink of offering the same peaceful contentment on a much grander scale. After the improvement, you see, everyone's greatest fear shall be drowned out by a message much like the ones you receive in the Whisper. It'll be grand. So Mr. Curtin thinks he's doing, and by the way, I love the name Mr. Curtin, right? La Drope the Curtain. I think La Drope the is just let's drop the curtain, right? And that's the embodiment of Mr. Curtin. It's his name. Let's drop the curtain, right? What's the curtain? The Whisperer. Right, that's why he's called Mr. Curtin, is because his greatest life contribution is the curtain, right? The Whisperer, the Whisperer is the curtain. So anyway, and let's drop it. Let's bring the Whisperer. The helmet comes down on your head, right, and you get into the handcuffs, right? So really easy code breaking there for Stewart. There's a lot more I can go into this book. The last thing I kind of wanted to touch on is Mr. Curtin's all about control, right? He just has this obsession with control. And that's what the Whisperer does, is the Whisperer, it gets it so that it relays thoughts to you and rewires your brain chemistry so you're only focused on the things that alleviate your fears, right? That's why when Martina says it's a wonderful illusion because the fears come back later. Whenever you engage in the things that you're running from, you're running away from your fears and engaging in those things. When you go back to your fears, those things are always going to come back. They want more, right? And I personally experience this with porn, but everybody experiences this in their own way. It's great. It's a great way of setting up and reminding us. That's what great literature and great art, what it does is it reminds us of our struggles, reminds us of the things that we're currently dealing with, but it does so in a gentle way. It does so in a way where we can still kind of, even for a book like this, escape, and it's like you choose a book like this to escape from the world and get into these fantasy worlds and stuff like that, right? Only to come right back to it, right? That's what makes, I think, great art. And that's also Hegel's definition, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, so the whole point with this, is that Mr. Curtin is obsessed with control, right? The Whisperer is his device to enact control. We see this discussion at the end when they're in the room battling it out with each other, that he's all about control, CONTROL, right? They think it's the password to unlock the secret wall that runs all the computers in the Institute, right? Eventually we see that, and then it's like, oh, it's not control, but it's control with an E, because he's from the Netherlands and he's Dutch, and that's Dutch, control in Dutch, and he goes insane, right? Mr. Curtin, when he gets angry, he falls asleep, right? As opposed to Mr. Benedict, when he laughs, he falls asleep, right? So he's obsessed with control, and he's framed as evil, and he is evil. I mean, he doesn't even have to be framed. We can read this book, and clearly Mr. Curtin, he's brainwashing everyone. He's wiping them away. It's really sad, really. This book's really sad in some parts. He's got this island full of people that don't know who they are. They don't remember their old life, right? Milligan, right? The whole thing with Milligan was insane. And so it's interesting because we know that when we try to control things and we become really controlling, it just ruins us. It destroys us. And that's sort of, I think, the metaphor, the the symbol that Stewart's trying to draw here is that evil people like Mr. Curtin, they become just super controlling, and it undoes them. It undoes their intelligence. Mr. Curtin's a very smart man. He's very intelligent. He has a lot of gifts, right? But he let control, get to him, and it undoes him, and he escapes from the island. So that's for the second book, but that's sort of what this is implying, is when you're that obsessed with control, not only do you turn into someone evil like Mr. Curtin, but you kind of destroy yourself in the process, and that's sort of what Mr. Curtin has done, hence his name. And so it's just, the whole book is littered. There's a lot of moral dilemmas too, that giving a second read through, you could probably analyze. Was it right for the characters to poison everybody, right? To make them having to constantly barf and throw up at the Institute in order that they could speed up the process of getting into the Whisperer, right? And then it's like the existential thing of like, was Rini doing that because he really wanted to get back into the Whisperer, or was he doing it with the pure motive of getting out? So there's a lot to cover with this book, but these are just some of my initial reflections and thoughts, and I'm hoping that in doing this, it'll help me better recall when somebody asks me about this book. I could just talk about it forever, even if I've been 10 books down the line into something else. So that was my hope with this video. I hope you like this, and have a good one.